So hmm, credentials are the same, Cisco one. Okay, I'm in my CMS core 3. So for the initial configurations, we need to perform the prerequisite settings, which are needed to prepare the server deployment for its services to be enabled. We'll see IP connecting to DNS and so on. Just a minute. Okay, so let's first verify a few things like user list. These are some verification commands we can use. In the user list, you will see administrator, admin. Only these are the users created, the admin users. And the administrator, this is not logged in. Admin, this is logged in. User, it's details you can see here of the users. But here we can only see these users, admin one. Then we can see interface. By default on CMS, we have 4 interfaces which are used to connect the different parts of the network. Interface A is used and reserved for administrative purpose, like the console of any device, like a router's console, which is used for administrative purpose to configure it to take a console. So same way, interface A needs to be configured for that as an administrative interface. So if you put the command iface A, iface stands for interface A, you can see the details of it. You can see the MAC address and so on, speed, type, default, speed, duplex mode, and so on, which we can manually change as well. Here you can do IPv4A, that means interface A. Here we will be seeing the IPv4 address of this interface specifically, which is this. Address is fine. Gateway is this. MAC address, prefix, some routes configured to these destinations are there in our lab. Then we can verify DNS. Our DNS is pointing to any domain, and the DNS IP is 140.5. I think that would be the same for you as well. So we have common DNS. Then we have NTP server list, as we can have multiple NTPs as like primary, secondary for backup. So we can see a list of NTP servers. In our lab, we have one. If we have more than one, you will see a list of all the NTP servers here. You can see NTP status like we saw in the previous one when we enabled NTP manually. So here we can see the status. We can see a PKI list. And there is nothing because certificates and the services are not enabled here. So we need to enable that. So to enable these components of CMS, and certificates needs to be issued for each, which we will do self-signed. So we will enable all these services. Let's do it here. EKI. So here we will be able to see that earlier we were not able to access the web page. We will, and then we will be able to access web page after enabling these services. We should be, and we should also be able to see the web app being able to use as we will enable the web bridge service. So let's see that first. Self find web admin. I hope it's visible and not very small. Ah, now it will be. Okay, then EKI self find call bridge. So first we enabled web admin, now call bridge. and API web bridge. So command self and web bridge. So with these commands, PKI, self-signed web admin, call bridge, and web bridge certificates are created, and these services will be now enabled. So to enable these services to be accessed through different settings that we have to additionally add here, like the port number, and then call this certificate and key in the service. And we need to enable HTTP redirect for HTTP requests to come in, and we have to enable these services one by one. So up to here, we have only generated the certificate files and the keys. Now to enable these services, web admin listen interface A. We are creating a listening port. Let me give a port number 445. Now, what is this listening port? This is for the admin. For the web admin, what is the listening port? By default, when the request comes from outside, the HTTPS port is used for the communication. So that default port, which will be 443 only. That cannot be the same for our web admin. It has to be a different port locally. So we have to use a different port other than 443. So we are changing it here. We can do it on both the ends. So I or any one of the ends, like for the outside user for web bridge or for web admin, but it is recommended to use for web admin because just just assume that if you're giving your uh, link for a meeting link to be joined and your domain is specified, which is then added on the DNS, it is resolvable, everything is fine. But you are have changed this listening port for the users who are connecting from outside. So those users, maybe they are not very technical person and they are not aware of the port and how to change the port in the URL and so on. So that would be difficult. So we usually prefer keeping that for the users outside, for the customers, to keep it a default port. So without having to change the port number in the URL or something, they will be able to just put in the URL provided and they can join. But from here, when we will be using the web page, we will be using this port 445 and not 443. Yeah. So as admins, us who have changed it, we will be able to do that. So it is recommended to be used here, and we cannot use it the same 443. So we have to change it here. So we have to remember what port we have configured as web admin listen port. So this is what it is. If you do, there is a command if you give web admin listen A, this will work just like this, and it will take default port number. We don't want that here. Okay, so port number we have enabled. Next thing is web admin cert web admin dot key. And then we call this key and the certificate that we created in the previous lab in the PKI self-signed. So web admin dot CRT. Okay, it says it would require this information. Let's just web admin certs admin dot c admin dot crt. Yeah, it's accepted now. Okay, just with a little mistake in the command will not be executed. Like here, what I did was I missed S. It should be certs in this portion. So web admin certs, web admin key, and web admin certificate. This is the command. Next, web admin HTTP redirect. We have to enable HTTP redirect and enable keyword. And lastly, the service web admin enable. So these are some set of commands you will need to run. There are 4 basically for web admin. Web admin listen a port number, then web admin certs, web admin key, web admin cert, web admin HTTP redirect enable, and web admin enable. By this service will be enabled. Then next is we need to enable call bridge. Same way, call bridge, listen. For call bridge, we can use it the same. It is for creating the calls, we can use a port default. Call bridge first. Now we have to call the call bridge certificates we created with the command call bridge dot key bridge dot c. Done. And this call bridge service needs to be restarted. So you can give the command call bridge restart. Success key and certificate pair matched. This is a good result we wanted to have. Lastly, we need to enable web bridge. This is for the users who will be connecting from outside. So a web bridge service is required for that. Web bridge listen A. Here I want to keep the port default, so I will not put a port number. It will automatically take 443 by default. Then web bridge certs web bridge dot key and web bridge dot CRT. Okay, this is done. Next, additionally, here, always remember in the web bridge, you need to associate this with the call bridge certificate. A web bridge certificate is connected with the call bridge. Without the call bridge enabled with the web bridge, the outside users will not be able to join the calls. Yeah, so they will be able to connect the web bridge, but then the call will not be connected. So for that, we need to have a call bridge certificate also verified and authenticated with web bridge. So for that, the command would be web bridge trust, that we want the web bridge trust enabled with the call bridge .ci using this certificate. Should be accepted. Then that's it. Lastly, we need to enable WebBridge service. We can do these commands in any order, but this is the recommended order as a best practice. First, you have made these changes, enable the certificates, and then lastly, enable the service. That is a best practice. WebBridge enable. Bridge. All the commands are done. We have enabled the services. We first created the certificates and the keys. Then we have enabled these services. So here we see we have seen some detailed commands where we can enable these services with the port numbers and with the services enabled with certificates and keys, and integrated the web bridge with the call bridge. Now we will verify web bridge with a command status. It should be running, which is good. So our status is fine. All the services are executed and showed success and got completed. So now after this, we should be able to log in. So like I showed you earlier, I